through. This is growing dahlias for showing. Unashamedly, I am a dahlia showman. Quite a few of us are dahlia showmen. We grow them for that purpose. Obviously, we have a love for the flower and in all its forms, but the showing is what gets us up in the morning on the plots at silly o'clock doing silly things and walking miles with wheelbarrows and armfuls of water and driving halfway around the country showing them. So this is really about how to go about it and some mythology to it and really some of the detail. There will be a further one a bit later where we'll talk about nutter level. Well, some of you will probably get to the end of this and think we're nutters anyway. But some of the detail and the efforts that we go into and some of the numbers that we deal with, I'll try and hold those back because it could scare the life out of people rather than encourage. One thing I will say about showing is it is seen as slightly elitist. It's only in the sense that we grow very similar varieties because those are the ones that are reliable. We don't want to grow stuff that isn't going to do the job we want it to. But it's a wonderful, wonderful world. You know, when you're in there, you're involved in it, the camaraderie, the shows, the excitement side of it, the competition, and occasionally the winning is great. And you know, we're all on there. There's some top growers here tonight, and there's no secrets. So don't ever think there's secrets in this. There isn't. There is no magical fairy dust. There is no things that people won't tell. They'll tell you everything. It all comes down to whether you're prepared to put the work in and the effort and learn enough to do it. So we go into it. If I click that, there we go. So you've seen this one before. That was me when I was 12 years old. I'd been showing dahlias for 2 years by then. And that was now 35 years ago. And it's a bug. It's a bug you get, and at whatever level you start it at. This was just one vase of poms all the way to Glasgow. Obviously, if you haven't guessed by the accent, I'm in Essex. But went all the way to Glasgow with my dad. He was showing as well to show 5 poms. Come third in a class of 21 entries. And being the young, bumptious little boy I was, and I'm just a bit older version of that now, I went and found the judges, tugged on their sleeves and said, "Oi, mister, why didn't I win? Why did I come third?" And they took me over to the class. I think they probably wanted to clip me around the ear first, but and explained and told me where the faults were in the flowers, showed me where the benefits were in the winning entries, and then introduced me to the 2 guys that beat me. And there I got so much information from them, and they happened to be, at the time, the 2 best pom growers in the country, Frank Newbury and Robin Pierce. So it was no disgrace coming third to them 2, but it set me certainly on a mission to think, well, they're the guys I've got to beat, and situations directed me towards the poms. Some years later, and a bit of extra hair, which departed fairly quickly afterwards, and I then took them on in the 12 vases of poms at the National. This would have been 1998. 97th show was cancelled due to the death of Diana and the funeral being where the show was being held. And that year I did grow 300 poms, or 300 plants of poms to do it, which is half as many as I grew the year before. So I learned the lesson in the first year, but people remember me turning up at that show, walking in with 450, I think it was, poms cut on canes to sort this out. But it's a challenge. And there's a hair, and the great man himself there, Derek Hewlett, who's probably is still the #1 giant grower that there has been. He's not with us. I think Tony's catching him up, but that was probably about a 10-year mission. And sometimes the stories and missions that we go on that make it all the worthwhile when you win them. There's my dad, who's no longer with us either, but it was his fault that I started growing dahlias, and that was in our garden, leaning on the dahlia frame. And he used to show rabbits, birds, chrysanthemums. He used to grow those weeds as well, daffodils. and also vegetables, and whatever he grew, he had to show. He was as, I think that's maybe where I get my competitiveness from, somehow. But he loved it. He loved doing it, and I got the bug from him. These two fellas are probably, for different reasons, the greatest two exhibitors has been for a very long time. Unfortunately, the one in the corner, Dave Boyd's no longer with us, but really set new standards. And I think that there's always people that come along in all games, all professions, that just lift the bar up to a different level, and then it just means that we have to chase it. He was an absolute master at growing them plants. That certainly, I would say, I've always based my growing on these two. But Dave was a master at that early plant culture, getting the right plant, the base and everything right in the beginning, and you could see that in his plants. Dave Spencer's probably the other way around. The plants aren't always the prettiest when they go in the ground, but what he then does with them, and his masterful timing of the flower, and the control is second to none. And he's responsible for the knockback method that we use now. It was something he developed. But if any combination of them two, or either one, I'll be happy. Now, if you're going to show dahlias, it's a different way of going about things. One, you need a plot. So that was my old plot. It's not as big as that now. Took a lot of hand digging, and the covers for the covered varieties, which we'll cover later. But what's an ideal dahlia plot? Well, anything with soil, preferably in the open, so you don't really want too much shade. I used to get a little bit of shade from an oak tree, but only in the morning. The openness then causes more problems with wind and other things, but a good open site with a fairly rich soil. I'm in Essex, so we've got good Essex clay underneath all this, so you have to sort of break that down. But within the first year of a Clearfield site, it was fine. Dug it, rotivated it, plant them. They're more tolerant than we give them credit for. I think the pH, anything of neutral, is fine. They don't really like it too acidic because it slows the nutrient uptake if your soil is too acidic. But just a good open site, and it's what you do with them. There's no magical soil anywhere, that doesn't happen. But I grow, in that plot, I grew up to 1,000 plants. 800 was more comfortable in double rows. The time wasn't very comfortable. That was a lot of hours, and that was in my back garden. I now grow on allotments, where I've got no hose pipes. I can't use hose. Everything's watering cans, walking up and down 20, 30 yards at a time to water them. So the numbers have come down quite dramatically. You could fit about 200 plants on what I know as half a plot, which is about 28 foot by 46 foot. About 200 is about comfort. That's a lot of plants. But the planning is the key. So I'm throwing big numbers out there, but if you want to go into showing, there's no point planting plants in the ground and then trying to decide what you're going to do with them. You've got to decide what the aim is, where you're trying to go, what you're trying to do. Is it a vase of 3 at your local show that you really want to win? Do you want to get that silver medal at your local show with a great vase of dahlias? Is it a 2 or a 3 vase class at your local show? Fine, pick. It doesn't matter how big the target is, as long as you've got one, and then you've got to plan how you're going to get there. So if you're looking at a 3 vase class, and certainly at county level, so the Essex, Kent, Sussex, Surrey, and around, 3 vase classes are quite achievable. They're very competitive. You don't need a big number of plants. You just need to have the right plants in the right numbers. And the best number is the one that you can manage properly. Not too many. Never grow more than you can cope with, because it's false economy. You'll end up not growing them well. So you've got to have a plan. You've got to know what you're doing, because the plants won't appear in a greenhouse just when you want them. You've got to get the stock and get the advice on what you need to do. There's me and Dave. We've become very good friends, and that might be your aim. You might want to put up a 5 classification championship. You'll need a lot of plants if that's what you're going to do, and especially if you're going to repeat it throughout the show season. And you have to remember that for us, the show season is about 3 weeks. And at a top level, you don't want to just turn up at one show. You want to be at every show and competitive at every show. And that increases the numbers that you need quite dramatically. But if your target is one class at one show, you can bring their numbers down a lot. The hard bit, and it is the absolute magic thing with growing to show, is they don't move to show dates according to when you've got your flowers. You have to have the flowers when that show date is. And that is the hardest bit. Growing the varieties, they grow themselves pretty much. You're just going to help them along the way. But getting the flowers on the day that you want them is where it becomes hard. We, by growing bigger numbers of plants, will make that life easier because you've got more to spread. But really anything between 6 and 10 plants of a variety should be enough to produce you a very good vase of dahlias on the day, as long as it's on the day that they're flowering. And that's where you need to control. Look at the varieties that we'll see time and time again. The standard show varieties, they're probably the best in their sections, with the odd exception. I don't know if Dave's Choice is one, which is the white ball that's nearest to me, but it's one that I like growing, I can grow, and it seems that anyone with the name of Dave can grow, which he named it, so it has to be. But the others, standard varieties, and we'll cover those. This would be a standard 4 vase championship, which you'll find as a main class at county level shows, opposed to national. And you need 4 different classifications, so you can't just plant 40 plants, 10 of each, and hope. You need the spares, because one day the medium semis won't be so good and the smalls will, so you just need the spares in there. But that's a 4 vase championship. And then these are your 3 vase classes. Again, a county show, so that you've got good exhibitors, but it levels the playing field when you're only looking at 3 flowers in a vase. It makes life a bit easier for people that aren't growing the big numbers to match the flowers, to get the uniform matching size centres form between there. And look at the schedule, find ones that are a little bit more open-ended, because it means that you can use your flowers in different ways to achieve different things. You know, both the varieties repeat in all the classes, it's just how you show them. But I would say a 2 or 3 vase class with a fairly limited number of plants is quite achievable and a good target. Never not show because you don't think you're going to win, because you'll never learn. That's the best way of learning, is getting beaten time and time again. And the more you get beaten, the better you get. You've got to have broad shoulders and not really care. So really start with the best and the most reliable. So this really, through the main sections, is in my mind a good place to start. Now, I've tried to allow, there's varieties in here that I've never grown and I never can. But if you live up near Andrew, it's a different story. Dahlias are in some way fickle to their climate. So varieties like Kiwi Gloria, love the north. Whatever we do down our end of the world, we can't produce them like that, but we can produce other things. So you know where you are, know which is best. A quick run through there. With the giants, I mean, now I'm specialised in giants, so I've got 38 varieties, but I wouldn't suggest many more than what's on there for people to grow if they wanted to grow giants. I would say Valentine is still the most consistent, reliable flower. Sir Ralph Ramsey, Alvarez Supreme, they're all more classical formed, well-formed flowers. And then we've got the Brins, which are the thugs of the family, really. They're very big, Bryn Turfel, Waggy White, Louis White, they're all sports of the same. They're impressive, but whether you're going to win shows with them, you need to be more lucky. The reliable ones are the ones above. There isn't much in large, in the sense of the Semicactus Challenger is the number one. It consistently grows north, south, east and west of the country, and is a good performer. Hamaria Accord would be a second string to that if you fancy growing 2 or want to try something different. Mediums are split north and south. Moonlights, although those raised about 12 miles from where I live, we can't grow them down here. They just do not enjoy our weather formationally, but they stay clean. You move them up north, you get sparkling flowers with brown spots at the back. So it's about finding the imbalances and working out what you can achieve. The hillcrest, so Candy in the sports, has a white one, which is probably going to take over as far as the hillcrest family. They tend to work north and south, and are good bulletproof, well formed flowers if you can't grow the moonlights. And maybe with something like Rycroft Helen. There's loads more to this, but that's for you to find out. Stay away from the new ones. Do not go out there and think you're going to fill your garden up with a load of heroes that have just been released because they're the best. They're not. You know, it takes 10 years for something to be the best, in the sense that it's consistent year after year, and it's got the health and the vigour and reliability. So medium decks, Western Harry is one of the few mediums that you can grow outside without covers, and will take the weather, which is always a bonus if you can't use covers or don't want to go down that route. Mascot Mayos, Alf's Mascot, Charlie 2, they're all very much the same Dahlia. It's a good, reliable medium deck. Small decks, Dianes, they're probably my number one variety, and certainly down this end. But they can be a bit soft when you go north, and that's where the festivals, Gateshead Festival, Amber Festival, really come into their own in there. And then others, Chervil Megan, Brenda T, a good bulletproof Dahlias. They might not be the cream of the crop, but they'll get your flowers on the bench and they'll get you competing. There's a small cactus, the Kiwis. There's 3 of them really in the sports. Always worth trying a plant and find out whether you can grow them or not. But the gold crests are probably easier and more consistent. And if you want value for money, then Rycroft Zoe, Greenway Zoe, Ruskin Myra are varieties that you can grow 14 flowers on the plant, and they will give you good, reliable show flowers. Maybe not up to the level of the Kiwis, but they will get you on the bench and get you competing. Miniature ball, there's loads of miniature ball, but really beyond Mary's Jamander and Jamander, it's up to you. You try these things and see if they suit you, but you won't go wrong with those two as far as good, reliable varieties. Miniature decks, I could probably give you 20. There's a wealth of miniature decks out there that are all good performing, but Mars and George, Mars and Suzanne, Blight and Stella, they're good, reliable varieties, been around for a few years. And so you could probably pick 1 or 20 and it won't steer you wrong. Poms, there's loads, but Gertler Twilight, Hollywood Twilight are good. They're different, they're earlier flowering, they're smaller flowers, so you don't need to grow such a big plant to produce them, so they're probably easier work. More Place, Willows Violet are all of the same type. They're bigger, they're later, they're a bit more work, but they are good, reliable varieties. Willows Violet's been around for 60, 70 years. So there's not much wrong with them. And Rhonda and their sports. Good thing with the Rhondas is you don't need to take the calyxes off the back of the bud to get them to go around, so they take a bit less work. But you always remember, you might be the best grower in the world, but if you're going to go and compete at a specialist show with Calvin Floodlight, it don't matter how good you are at growing it, you're unlikely to win against an averagely grown show variety, because they've got all the credentials that are needed. So really start with a simple, get the right varieties to start with. You'll all find your own and make your plan. This was a plan from a few years ago when I was in my old plot, and it's just about a way of me knowing what I've got, what cuttings I need to produce, what plants you need to produce. You have to start this. Normally these lists start before the end of the season has finished, because you know that if you need stock of varieties you want to try, who to tap up, and then most of those key varieties are in there. Now that was a list for 778 plants, and there was only 17 varieties. But that's the extreme of it, in the sense of we're trying to compete for 3 weeks strong every time. That is not a number you need to be doing to show Dahlias. That's a nudge towards the nutter. do need a greenhouse. You won't do it without really, or a method of producing plants. And I would say in all reality, if you're only going to grow 30 to 50 plants, which is a competitive number of flowers in some classes, you might almost do better to buy the plants, buy the cuttings, because the cost in propagating only becomes worthwhile when you get above a certain number. If you can tap up a local grower that might produce you a few, and even if you're giving them a drink, it might be a way of doing it. But there's quite a lot of expense in setting up a greenhouse to propagate large numbers, and it might be something that puts people off. Well, look at the costs and see where it's best. You need soil warming cables and somewhere to root them in, and heat and light. It's quite an expensive part of the hobby, and it's probably the only expensive part of the hobby other than fuel driving the shows. But you've got to have a plan. You can't just decide you're going to do it without having the prep work in. You'll see us all now starting to take cuttings, and that's not because we're going to plant those plants. They're there to build up the numbers, and you want consistent batches of plants that are all as close to each other as they can be. And you can't always do that by going to the tuber once and take the cuttings. You need other routes to get the numbers, and we do that with mother plants by just taking early cuttings and chopping the tops off them at the same time as others. And we've done propagation in the last one. If you want to see about cuttings, if you go on the Facebook page, there's a couple of good videos there that are just about taking cuttings, and it just saves us a bit of time in this one. You know, that's where the plan doesn't start there. It starts there by getting the tubers in the first place. But at that point, that's where you set your stall out to what you're trying to achieve. You're putting the tubers in the ground and the soil to produce the cuttings to produce your plants. And that's normally starts around January for most people, if you're trying to sort of get them going. Plants, the whole thing of growing for show is you've got to count backwards all the time, because it's not going forward. You need to know when you need something by, not when it's going to be. Most exhibitors won't take a cutting that is going to be grown as a show plant much earlier than April. Normally, I would say the ideal time is about middle of April to take the cutting and try and get roots on it. That'll give you 2 weeks to root it. It'll give you 3 weeks in a 3-inch pot, and then a couple of weeks in a 5-inch pot, if that's the way you're going to plant them, from a 5-inch pot. And then you're in. It's the end of May, and you've not wasted a load of time, and your plants aren't hard or oversized. So it's about gearing everything up ready for that time, that window that you're going to say, now's the time, and take as many cuttings as you can at the same time, so that it's a bit factory. You're just trying to get, if you want 10 plants, you want 10 identical plants, because then when you do the treatment to one of them, you can repeat it 10 times and they will all react in a very similar way. You can't really do that with tubers when you're planting chicken legs and field tubers and things like that, because they'll all start at different times and do different things. The way we grow, certainly in the UK, is a controlled method, and cuttings is the controlled way of doing it. They're soon grown, they're soon put up, and once they start looking sort of nice and green and fresh, it's time probably to put them up into a bigger pot. We don't want yellow plants. The moment, if you're growing something to show, you're trying to grow it to its pinnacle, to its the best way you can. And the moment a plant looks a bit yellow because it's hungry, it's too late. You've got to do, it's all about giving the plant what it needs, not when it needs it, but just before it needs it. Because if you wait for it to wilt because it's dry, it's wilted. If you wait for it to go yellow because it's hungry, and any damage, and then we're talking minor, I mean, this is, quite detailed in a sense, but any effects from that will have happened. So it's about learning what your plants look like, what's happening, and giving them the right stage. At this stage, size plant is when I'd be thinking about popping them into a bigger pot. The young growing plants, and we're trying to keep them young and growing. These plants are going to turn out in 3 months' time with 4 10-inch flowers on the end of them. They've got a lot of growing to do and you need to help them along the way. So potting them into a 5-inch pot, that's the size stage there on my left that go in, and then that'll be ready for the ground probably only 2 weeks later. They will grow quick if given the opportunity to. What we're trying to do by potting the plants up and taking these cuttings later is keeping the plant young, fresh and soft. This bit where the blue arrow is pointing, you can see it's narrower on the stem at the base than it is further up the plant, and that's because it's hardened. So at some point it's got hungry, it's got dry, or it's got a bit popped down, and it starts hardening the stem. The one on the right with a smiley face, you can see it's as fat down the base as it is up the top, and that's a great plant. You know that's ready to go and ready to grow. You'll find the biggest thing in dahlias that will hurt you is indecision. Decide how you're going to grow your plants, and there's two ways. You either grow them strong and large, knowing you're going to cut them about later. In the north, you'll get away with more planting a smaller plant, and knowing that that plant will be controllable because it's growing a bit slower, and you're going to just stop it once and let the breaks come. For us in the south, that's quite hard to do because the plants will want to start shooting before we want them to. So we tend to, and certainly I do, adopt a double stop method, and that's just about timing. It's not about anything else, it's about getting the flowers to produce when we want them to. So on the left there, we've got a pom plant, so we've already stopped it. We're trying to get 30, 40 flowers on that plant, and it's not going to happen by you deciding halfway through the season that you need the flowers. You need to do the work early. So every time that plant was potted, it was stopped. So it's been stopped once, it gets stopped again when it goes in the ground. These growing tips here will be removed and then controlled along the way. And you'll see it later, the differences in the plants. This would be a giant, that's a Kenora Valentine plant, single stem. We only want 3 flowers and we're just going to grow it as strong as we can. The compost is the same for both. The timing, we would have taken the pom cuttings earlier because we've got more growing to do, but all the treatment along the way is the same to the plants at this stage. Plants, I don't like hardening off. I don't want them to catch a cold. I just want them to get used to where they're going. So I'd often just take them outside out the greenhouse for a week before they go into the ground, just to get used to the new position. The plants have been sorted, organised, so I know that they're all in the batches ready to plant. And I've took out the bad ones and I've kept the best ones and given away a few along the way. And to plant a number, you need to be planned and prepared. So I mark out the planting spaces. The ground would have had probably some chicken pellets, the poultry pellets, bloodfish and bone, a bit of grow more, a bit of bone meal, anything I can lay my hands on really, just put into the ground. If you're going to use base dressings, which all of those are, you need to apply them probably a couple of weeks at least before you're planting, because they will take time to start breaking down and working. It's not a chuck it in the hole and it'll help. So just plan that again. 2-foot spacings is generally considered to be the ideal spacing for plants. So I've just put the canes in at 2-foot spacings along a row. Double rows, so 2 rows of plants, and then a path are comfortable and easy to work on. But you can grow them in 3 rows, 4 rows even, if space is limited. But you do end up stretching and it just makes life harder. So if you've got the room, double rows are easier to work on. Things we're looking out for when we're selecting plants to plant is the yellowing. We can see on this left-hand one, the old leaves, the original cutting leaves are yellowed and hard, so that plant's had some trouble. There's a little bit of this darkness in the leaf, and that could be signs of a virus in the plant. It's just generally not a happy plant. The one on the right is very tall, leggy, long jointed, and you just want to avoid that if you can help it. If you can't, if that's the only plant you've got, plant it deep, chop it down, and they'll all make up. It's just you're trying to get what is ideal. This one, you can see a slug's had a go at one of the leaves, and this darkening in the tips, when the tip of the plant goes dark, that's quite often a sign of root rot. so that they've had a bit too much water, and some of those roots are rotting. If you took it out, you'll see some brown root rather than nice, fresh, white, healthy roots. Normally the darkened tips will show signs of that. And this one's just a beast of a plant. It's old. It would have been an early plant cutting that I've just hung on to. And it's just a big old plant, and it's not going to want to grow away strongly from that. It's going to sit there for a while before it does. So things to avoid if you can, but the world's not an ideal world. We do with what we can. Dig a big hole, put the plant in, and you're off. The season starts. I use a spade rather than a trowel. I like a nice big hole to plant, and I don't like going around on my hands and knees too much. And it just means that when you plant the plant, you can leave a well. So when you're watering and feeding, it goes to the plant. And the first cane, the marker cane that was put there in the first place, so I knew where to dig, also becomes the first support cane for that plant. So it's just a job that you sort of saves double handling, I suppose. The plants are all at the ends of their beds ready for me to plant, and I'll try and plant all those in a day if I can. The holes will be dug first, everything ready to go. So they're in, they're comfortable. You can see the angle of those canes. We're allowing the plant to fill the 2 foot of space that we're giving it. There's no point putting the sticks in bolt upright and saying I'm going to keep you within that space, because that's not 2 foot, that's 2 foot. But the plant, as it grows, gets bigger. So by angling them out, you're supporting the plant in the early stages, and as it becomes bigger, there's more space and equal support. And a further 2 canes will be added there to the front. As you can see on the right, the 3 canes are there. And then as the plant grows, just a piece of string around the 3 canes just to hold them within that framework. You're not going to truss them up like a chicken. You're just trying to support the plant. It'll hold itself up. It's just when the winds come, and it helps keep the stems straight and give you straight stems when it comes to staging them. That's an irrigation system there. I wish I could use it now. And there's the pests. We found one of them. That's Dave. He visits now and again, and that's the start of the. Well, let's have a look at his plants, see what he's growing, see what the competition might be like, see if there's any mistakes made, and we'll all make our own judgments of other people's plants, even from the day they go in the ground. It's what we then do with them. We'll change that. But there's no. This is a camaraderie. He's probably locally the biggest competition I would have. The 2 of us will go head to head at every show in our area. But it's there, and there's no secrets to say, there's nothing hidden. Stopping now. Stopping is 2 things. It's to encourage the plant to produce breaks, which are the side shoots that are going to flower, and to get them to do it evenly and from low down in the plant. It's also the method of trying to control the timing of the plant. So I know that ideally anywhere around the end of June, early July, if you've got a pip in the leaf break of a shoot, that should develop into a flowering shoot by the time August bank holiday comes. I can't in the south get that by just planting the plant and stopping it once, because the side shoots will already be developing by the time we get there, and then you end up in this no man's land. So I know Dave does, make the decision that we're going to stop this plant twice. And we do it early, and then we'll do it at the time we want to, not when the plant wants to. So quite often I like to get them in the ground for a week, just to get the roots out, and I'll cut the top off the plant down to about 3 pairs of leaves. So we don't want hundreds of shoots, we just want enough to work with, and we want them nice and strong and even. So end of the first week of June into the second week of June, knife comes out, chop, down it goes. And you need to be brave of heart, really, to do this, because you are chopping lumps of plants off and wondering if you've done the right thing. The poms are a different matter, because we're trying to get a lot of flowers. This is after that plant we saw had its growing tips removed again. And generally I would do it about 3 times, somewhere around about the end of June, up to the end of June, and then just let them come and I'll play with them later. But get the work done early. A lot of dahlia growing is about winding the spring. It's like a clockwork mouse. You're putting all the work in early on so that once you get to that point, you just let it go, because there's nothing else you can do. You can't change what flowers are doing when they're flowering. All that has happened 2 months beforehand. So it's just getting things right, winding that spring. And you can see it's a completely different plant, and that will be left to come up and flower after its last stop. That makes me wince now I see straw, but mulching for me is important, and I don't know many growers that don't grow without mulching the ground. And we're doing it for a couple of reasons. One is to keep the moisture in the ground, to keep the feed in the ground, and to keep a more constant temperature. Because if the sun comes out and the soil warms up and then it gets cold, you don't like it. You wouldn't like it. If your temperature was going up and down like a yo-yo, you'd struggle to adjust. So the straw does keep a more level temperature. It means the growth is more consistent, and it does keep the moisture in the ground for longer. So you're not watering so much, you're not feeding so often. You're not going to give them a liquid feed and then a day later you're going to have to water them again because the ground's dry. It just helps space it, and it does keep your knees clean as well when you're on your hands and knees going around doing it. I would dig the straw into the ground, and that will help improve the soil as well. The problem with straw, which I still think is probably the best mulching material as far as the plant is concerned, is like I had this year. There was some residual weed killer in the straw, and it wrecked me. That was the end of the season. The Dahlias react to it; they don't like it, and hopefully it's not going to still be in the ground next year when I put more plants in. You've got to know where you're getting this straw from, and that it's a good, reliable source. I thought I had, but I still got caught out. The alternatives would be ground cover fabric like Mypex or any weed fabric, and that will do a very similar job. It's just a bit harder to plant through it, and it's not going to improve the soil, but it's a method that probably as many, if not more, people use than straw now. But any other organic matter, as long as you know its source, is also fine. You're just covering the ground. So we're getting towards that second stop, and the straw's down, and you're burying the plants, and then they come up again, and then you chop them down, and then they come up again. They think they're fighting a losing battle, I think, half the time, but they're in there. You can see them nestled in, and they soon come up. And we're getting towards the very end of June here, and it'll be time to do the second stops, which is the one that we're doing to time the shoots. It's about 70 days roughly from pip of a small pip in the side of a leaf to flower on average. You'll have to work that out between your areas in the country, but 70 days is about the norm. Spraying and feeding, the best way to deal with problems is to not let there ever be a problem. So you don't ever want to be dealing with an infestation of blackfly, because you would have seen the first blackfly when they first appeared and dealt with them in a small way then. No one likes splashing loads of chemicals around. We don't do it by choice. The best way to use less and the best way to use them effectively is to always check your plants, just to look at them. Is there any ants going up and down the plant? Because if there is, the blackfly won't be far behind because they're taking them up there. You can use, I've been using SB Invigorator, which is a non-chemical treatment, and that seems to be working quite well in most situations. But again, use it as a preventative rather than a cure. And then if you haven't got anything to cure, you don't need to cure it. Feeding, the base dressing goes in, as we've said, and that is just a good, I see that as steak and chips. That's the steak and chips for the plant. It's a good bit of dinner that's going to be there for a long period of time and will last a while. On top of that, we use liquid feeds. And there's a rule of thumb in growing for show. If you're going to feed, you'd feed a high nitrogen feed in the first month, a balanced feed in the second month, and a high potash feed in the third month. And it's really a 3-month growing season from planting to flower. So it would be something like a soluble lawn food would be good as a high nitrogen feed. I tend to use something like just a Miracle Grow or a standard soluble feed is as a balance. And then something like tomato feed or phosphagen is a good high potash feed. As to how much you use is something you have to really work out. I use a lot of it, but then I try and grow more flowers on the plant to counteract the amount of feed. It's ways and means, but I often would use up to 1 gallon of liquid feed per plant per week. That's heavy feeding, and I've always done it, and my methods are based around that. But I know a lot of people would perhaps only give 1 nitrogen feed, 1 balanced feed, and then just concentrate on the potash feeds, which is going to help stiffen the stems and ripen the flowering buds and so on from that point. And that's fine. You'll find your methods to suit what you need to do. But yes, they do need feeding, but liquid feeds are more like your McDonald's. They're a quick pickup that aren't going to last long. So you need to just perhaps be a bit more frequent with them. So the second stops for me is more of a chop than a stop. This is a plant, once we've topped the top out once, it's produced its side shoots, and we're now end of June, early July, and we're committing to make this plant flower when we want it to, or thereabouts. So the knife comes out and it gets a chop. I've just seen one of your faces. Angela, that was a look of shock. But it's frightening, and be careful. Don't go butchering them too much. Know what you can get away with. But I'm thinking of work later. I don't want hundreds of shoots. I want just more than I need. So by cutting the plant quite hard back, it's a good, strong plant. We've done everything right up till here. We've grown a nice root system, a nice, soft growing plant. And if you've ever cut a shrub back in the garden that's been established for a little while and you hard prune it, the resulting growth is strong, good growth, because the root system is underneath. The engine's in the ground. You're just trying to just control what the engine is putting out. And that plant will then still produce us probably 12 shoots, which is more than we're likely to need. If you're growing something like Mary's Demander, that you're going to grow probably more flowers on the plant, around about 14 or 16, then you probably leave an extra pair of leaves on them stems so that you're producing perhaps 20 shoots. But try to get it somewhere near what you want, because it's only going to be work later taking them all out. So that was the resulting plant that got chopped off, and doing that at the end of June, early July is quite nerve-wracking, but it works. You know, for me, it works. And please, these are things that I do, others do. You've got to find a way, but if you're going to start somewhere, start this way. It's not a bad way. In the north, you probably want to be doing this earlier than early July. You'll be more towards the sort of end of June. Varieties will differ. But from that, if you're growing large numbers of plants, you can actually just chop half back 1 week, give it a week, 10 days, do the other half. So you do then get a slight stagger in your flowering times. And you can see there, one row's been done, the other row's yet to be done. We do want them to flower about the same time, but we don't need them all exactly at the same time. So by staggering it might help. And they soon come back. There's the same plant, you know, with the shoots on it. And this would only be probably, I'd say 10 days to a fortnight after we'd chop the plants back. So they will grow quick, and we're into July. They grow at a rate of knots through July, and don't underestimate them. At this stage, because I know I've done it within the right sort of time frame, I know I can quite confidently remove all the shoots that I don't want at an early stage. I'm going to play with them later if I need to, but this is a good time for me to get in there and take out all the shoots that we don't need. So we're going to take it down to the flowering numbers, or they're close to it. Don't take out all the weakest. I tend to take out the strongest and the weakest, so that all the shoots that I'm leaving are of an equal size, or as close to being equal as possible. It's a bit like the fat chicken in the nest. It'll always eat the food first. So we don't want to leave one big strong shoot on the plant, because that will take the energy out of the whole plant. Try and keep them even, and leave yourself with a fairly well balanced plant. Don't leave them all on one side or all the other. Just down to the flowering numbers, bit of room about them, and now the power, and you know, will go into the ones we're going to flower. And it's a nice time to do it, because if you leave it much later, there's a lot of work to be done and you run out of time. I haven't even tied these plants up yet. The chicanes have been there for 6 weeks, but we haven't put a bit of string around there because the plants never got big enough to warrant tying up. But from this stage is where we're going to protect those shoots and control them upwards. And they soon grow. You know, the plants will motor. They're geared up for it. That's all they want to do is grow. And you know, they become like cabbages, and up they come. There's that pom plant that we saw earlier with some buds in it. At this stage is where you can look at it and decide whether you've got enough flowering shoots or not enough. You can then always take a handful of buds out. That's the buds in the top corner here. And just knock them back, because we've got shoots here that are going to come up through and flowering. So these will just follow on after. You don't need to be as critical about timing. It doesn't matter if you have a few poms flowering early. It gives you a chance to look at the size and adjust if you need to later. Now this was you could call it a Dave Spencer method, but it's a knockback method. And this is where we're going to fine tune the timing. We've got them in about the right neck of the woods. And once you've got a bud, you're in control. You can't stick buds on plants. So always err on the side of caution when you're doing that second stop or even your first one. When you've got a bud, you can do something with it. If you haven't got a bud, you can't stick them on. So it's getting them going. And once you're there, this is when you're then counting. You're trying to work out how far away are you from your target show. And on average, you could use about a 25-day period from a bud, like a pea-sized bud, to full flower. Smaller flowers will be quicker, larger flowers will be longer. So if you're 35 days before your target show and you've got a bud, there's no point leaving it there. All it's going to do is give you a flower 10 days before your show. And there's no point having the best flowers in the world with no shows to go to. So you can control them at this stage. Remember, the plant is already down to the number of flowering stems, and we're going to adjust. It's generally, for every pair of leaves you go down the stem, delays that flower by a week. So those are flowering. This shoot here should flower or produce a bud in about a week to 10 days time. So you're going to delay this by 10 days. You will cut the stem here above it. Hopefully you can see my cursor, just by that where it says 1 week. And that larger shoot on the left stays. Every other shoot on that stem gets removed at that stage. So you're putting all the energy into that one that you're saying, you're going to flower in the right time, now do it. If you don't take the other side shoots off at that point, you'll end up with a gooseberry bush with hundreds of shoots, taking all that energy away that we don't want them to do. So you're close enough to the show time by this point to be able to commit that they ain't going to be far off. So you can use this method to focus the flowers. So if you're growing small numbers of plants, you can tweak them so that you're trying to flower them all close to each other. Or we tend to use it when you're growing larger number of plants to make sure that you spread the flowers out. So you delay some, you allow others to come to spread the flowering out over a wider period. But it's something that needs a bit of practice, but it's something that a lot of us, I think all of us do it if we have to. The ideal world is you plant a plant, take the top out, and it'll have flowers on the day you want it. That'd be lovely, but it doesn't happen that way very often. So we're getting into show time or flowering time. And you can just see the plants now coming up. The ties are going around the plants to keep them growing up in the space that they are. By this stage, you shouldn't be daylight between your plants because they're filling the space you're allowing them to fill. And you're seeing buds and colour. And it's normally at this point that you're about perhaps 2 weeks, 10 days, 2 weeks before the first show, and you're panicking. I'm not going to have any flowers. I'm never going to make it. I've messed it up. That normally means you've got it right. If you think you're going to make it, you end up wasting some flowers beforehand. And you can see this spread. So we've got flowers that are nearly fully open, and we've got buds that are yet to come, and down the beds there'll be even smaller buds. So we've managed to spread the flush out, and the shows haven't quite started yet. Now we've been to show time. And again, we've got flowers that can go to the show, flowers that go to a show in a couple of days' time, some that go to a show in 5, 6 or weeks' time, 10 days' time. We've got a nice spread and the work's done. We can't adjust it by now. We've done it already. The covers tend to go up about a week before the first show, just to protect the bigger flowers. So anything generally medium upwards, you try and protect from the rain and the wind, just so we've got good, clean flowers when we come to show them. There's a bed of Canora Challenger, 4 flowers to the plant, and there'd be 10-inch flowers on it, on those. And you can see I want a show to go to with that bed of flowers. Cutting them is key. It's common sense. No one would ever tell you to go out in the middle of the day and cut flowers. You want it cool, dull, and if it means you have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go and cut them before the sun comes up, if it's going to be a hot day, that's what you do. Each flower will have a cane put to the stem with a twist tie so that it's really supported and we're not going to be flopping it around. But we cut them, sort them out, and then hopefully get them to the show. On a good day, that would be a cut. They won't all go to the flower show, they'll be sorted out, and the ones that are likely to be shown go. But that's actually 3 days apart. So the left-hand picture was one cut, 3 days later was the next cut. And you can still see the plants. These would be oak with goldcrest. They've still got flowers coming, they've still got buds, and they're going to see us through that 3-week period. But we should be able to go there pretty much every 3 days and cut the number of flowers. There's a lot there, that's a 50-foot row of them, but then that's with a lot of plants. Ideally, they could stay under the covers, but if it's going to be a hot day, then you just need somewhere cool and out of the sunlight to put them. And at the time, yes, that's my lounge, or was my lounge. And there's the armchair with a bucket on it, and the fish tank's got flowers on it, and the settee's got the flowers on it. There's my floor, and they'd go in the dining room. I've put buckets in the bath, in the kitchen, anywhere indoors to keep them cool. I didn't have a garage or anything else to do with it. And you pack the family off on a day trip on these days, and you fill the house up with flowers and sort them out. But you can see they're in the buckets. This is where we transport them, or most of us transport them in drums and buckets. The canes are on the stem, and they're just twist tied to the side of the bucket, and there's normally a bit of chicken wire in the bottom, just to stop them flapping around. The last thing you want to do is all this effort and damage the flowers getting them to the show. Why would you? Van, a car, whatever's appropriate to the volume you're growing or where you're going. The drums go in there. They've got water obviously in the bottom, and I just put screws in the bottom there to stop the buckets from sliding around in transit. You can put bricks, blocks, whatever you need to do something to stop these vibrating along and ending up the flowers touching. A good carpet in the bottom tends to work and stops them moving. If I'm only going local, sometimes you can just stuff newspaper in the tops of the buckets, and that just stops the flowers from contacting each other if you're not going too far. And then that's handy to fill the vases up after. And then you get to the shows. So all these varieties that we mentioned in the beginning, the Canora Valentines and things like that, that's them. This is Valentine. And you just got to try and get to the show and make the best possible job you can with the flowers. Present them well, make sure they're clean. If you've got any insect dirt on them, get your paintbrush out and take it off. Make sure there's no petals left in there that are going to cause you any bother from the judge. You know, if it's got a little yellow streak on it, pull it out. You can do that, but just do it. Don't not do it. Nothing worse as a judge, judging the flowers and going, look at this horrible petal here. Why is that still in the bloom? I can't see it if it's not there. This is what we're trying to achieve by showing, is getting flowers that are identical. These are the ideals. They don't happen. They're what we strive to get to. And the winning vase will be the one that's closest to the ideals. So we've got these, that's Winholm Dianes, 5 flowers, all the same size centres, same size flower, with no obvious faults. There will be faults. It's a natural thing, you'll find them, but that's what we're dreaming of. Look at the competition. Don't go blindly to a show and think, oh, I got beaten or I won, great. what was your strong points? What was the weak points? Always take a picture of the scorecards if they're left down. And this was Wales, in fact, I think. And Richard Thomas's exhibit was the one with the second on it, 16 points behind mine. But you're looking at the varieties that the judges are liking, because sometimes we like something or we don't see what the judges are seeing. So if you think you had a good vase and it got a low mark, have a good look at it, because you don't want to keep doing that and making the same mistakes time and time again. Flowers are still going, you keep cutting, you keep going. But it is about choice. You know, you can't struggle to find 3 flowers from those. But this is a glimpse at the extreme, I suppose, that when you're trying to do what some of us do. I always think if you want a really good vase of 5, you probably need 15 flowers plus to really get them to match. If you can get to 20 good flowers, you'll probably find you'll have 2 or 3 vases of 5, because there's only so many possible variants. And you're just trying to take the guesswork out of it. Stage them well. Do the best job you can, because you've worked hard all year to get them there. Don't spoil it at the end. When it comes together, that's Terry Clark, Andrew's won it, Ian's won it. There's a few of us here that have won this. That was the aim and the pinnacle. Try and achieve it and take some pride in it. Take as many pictures as you can. Sit there, stand there, stare at it for as long as you can, because another day goes and you can't see it. They're in the bin. You can see that the same sort of varieties are repeating through the exhibits, because they're good, reliable varieties, time and time again. Challenger at the back, the Pomsica, the Twilight, the pink ones in the middle is Hillcrest Candy, Marston Suzanne, and Dave's Choice. That was in Scotland, and that was the best vase of semi-cactus in show, which up there they can grow moonlight. So that was a real pleasure in winning that with Candy, but it didn't go down. It just comes, take pleasure in it, enjoy it. And if all else fails, just grow pumpkins. But just, don't ever be afraid to show. Grow them. We're doing it for different reasons. People grow dahlias for the diversity, the prettiness in the colours. We're probably doing it and take the joy out, the perfection in the flower when it's at its very best. Whatever floats your boat, do it and enjoy it. But if you're going to grow and show, say you decide you're going to have a go. If you decide to go to your local show, don't go, I don't think they're good enough, I'm not going. Cut them, put them in the vase, and let the judge work it out. Because quite often, the amount of times while I stand there looking at a plot 3 days before a show and think, I've messed it up, they're terrible, I've wasted my time, I'm not going, oh, what? And then the morning comes, you go out there, cut a few flowers and think, oh, they're not too bad, they might be all right. You never know what anyone else has got. If you're having problems, they probably are too. And just get them on the bench and let the judges sort out whether they're good enough, because they will. And if they're not, talk to the people that you're showing against, and they will tell you everything they can to help you do better. If you're still awake, well done. If not, you better wake up now. You'll be welcomed with open arms, I'm sure. If not, find one that's a bit further away that's more sociable. I've never found a bad one yet. Right. That's a mean beard you got there, Matt.
Dave, I got a question regarding your...
Now I'm unmuted, yeah. Don't look at that. Yeah, it's been lazy lockdown beard. Waiting for the weather to change.
We've just been winding him up about his beard, Dave.
I'm like the wild man of Hyde Hall. I don't think I've left sight for over a month.
That's what growing pumpkins does to you, you see.
I've just found out about that, yeah.
Record holder pumpkin grower.
Yeah. And he was me.
See the lightning's growing dahlias, so that's all right.
And he was me thinking that giant pumpkin was yours.
That one was, but it's small compared to what he does.
Oh, so It's not a bad effort, but
No, I needed someone to give me decent seeds, but
well, if you want another go, I'm sure I can help you out.
if I